How should Kentucky fans react whenever John Calipari steps back into Rupp Arena this Saturday? Well, I think we've got a pretty good answer, and it comes from Mark Pope himself.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing how exactly we as fans of Kentucky react whenever Arkansas and Coach Cal come to Rupp Arena this Saturday. We've got some pretty interesting comments here from Mark Pope himself about how the day will go. Also on today's episode, we've been teasing this for 2 days in a row now. I'm going to dive into some theoretical possibilities for the rest of Kentucky's season, what their seeding should look like heading into both the SEC and NCAA tournament, and then I want to just take a look at some of the teams on the 12 and 13 seed line, because if you get down to the 12 as a possible 5 seed, things do start to get a little ugly. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if they win, they'll score $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. If you're listening on podcasts, would appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So Mark Pope was asked about Coach Cal and kind of how things are going to be this Saturday and how fans will maybe react, and he had some interesting quotes. KSR wrote an article about it. I'm going to dive into some of the most important points here within his quotes. I will just go ahead and tell you up front, there's been a discussion amongst Kentucky fans as to whether or not Cal will be booed or should be booed this Saturday. I'll just go ahead and tell you up front, I think he's going to get booed. I don't think he should get booed, and I think Pope has some similar remarks here. Let's dive into them. He said, when asked about Coach Cal, said, "Hey, listen, we have been blessed at the University of Kentucky to have some of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game of basketball. Certainly, Cal is one of those. He's a Hall of Fame coach in his 15-year tenure, and what he accomplished at the University of Kentucky was incredible. He, in some ways, revolutionized the game of basketball. He's left a legacy that probably won't ever be reproduced in the same way that he did it. As a member of BBN and a huge fan of Kentucky basketball, my whole heart is here. I love Cal. I love Cal for what he did for Kentucky basketball, and on a very personal level, he's been to Leanne and I so good as a mentor and a friend." That's kind of where my head was kind of at whenever I was heading into this week was, look, this is a Hall of Fame coach that brought us a national championship. We can sit here and argue about whether or not he should have brought more, about whether or not he should have done more with the talent that he brought in and the rosters that he created. But there is no denying the man was one of the greatest coaches in our program's history. And on top of that, our current head coach has a ton of love and respect for him. He said so verbatim earlier today. As a mentor and a friend, he cares about him, and as a coach, he respects him as one of the best to ever do it, especially in the blue and white. I think as fans, whenever he comes into Rupp Arena this Saturday with Arkansas and with some former players, I think, yes, there will be booing as much as you would normally get for an average conference opponent, if not more, because of who he is and who he's got with him. But I think as fans, we should be able to take a step back and realize what he has done for the program, kind of set aside what has happened here as of late and understand that Rick Pitino, for all of the negativity that we threw at him for so long, he had a day where eventually he was welcomed back into Rupp Arena. And actually, Mark Pope talked about this as well during this conversation. Here's another quote from Coach Pope. As time goes on and circumstances change, there's going to be a time when Cal walks back into this arena and he's going to feel all of the love that BBN has to offer, because that's what we'll do with our family. We'll see Saturday. So again, Pope reiterating here, this is somebody we love. This is somebody we care about. This is somebody that we respect. This is somebody that Kentucky fans should look at here and have a lot of respect and, again, appreciation for, as somebody who was a part of the family. But Pope kind of changes his tune towards the end of this quote, and it's super interesting to see kind of the direction that he takes as far as, obviously appreciating, but also acknowledging what this game is. He said, we'll see Saturday. Saturday is going to be a competition, right? It's also a competition. It's just going to be what it is, but I have a ton of love for Cal, and I'm grateful for what he did here at Kentucky. I'm grateful that I get to be here and enjoy some of the fruits of his incredible labors here. I was super appreciative of him, and I know everybody in BBN feels the same way, even though I also know everybody in Big Blue Nation wants to win this game on Saturday. Could not be spelled out more clear there at the end of his quotes. It's a competition. This is a game that Kentucky wants to win, and this is a game that Mark Pope acknowledges the fan base wants him to go out and make a statement in this Saturday. For all of the love, for all of the appreciation, for all of the respect, whatever positive word you want to throw in there, you have to acknowledge this is a game that Kentucky, quite frankly, I don't think can afford to lose because of the blemish on their resume it would be, but also the blemish that it would be against your former head coach. Yes, you will have boos. Yes, you will have some hostility. Coach Cal has said as much himself. He expects to get booed. But again, I want to reiterate, I think as we get closer to this, we should consider kind of what this was for us, right? Listen to what our current head coach is saying about this man, and then also realize this is at the same time a game that we very much so need and want to win. So take all of that into account. I know a lot of you in the comments seem to have differing opinions about what Cal should be looked upon as, whether it be somebody that was a traitor, whether it was somebody that's one of the greatest coaches ever, specifically at Kentucky. And I'd like for you to sound off in the comments below. Let me know what you think after hearing what Mark Pope has to say about the love and respect that he believes Coach Cal should have and kind of what should happen this Saturday. Of course, we'll dive further into this matchup as we get later into the week. All right, I want to talk a little bit here about bracketology, about Kentucky basketball's potential resume, and then some potential candidates for who Kentucky could be facing in the NCAA tournament. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is, of course, here, and it's one game, two teams, and endless possibilities for you. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, because whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it super easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds, and you can feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what is happening on the field. And of course, again, it's super easy to navigate all while all of this is happening. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's all simply icing on the cake. You can download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Again, that's FanDuel.com. You can bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. If you didn't see our recap episode from last night, recapping Kentucky basketball's 78-73 win over the Tennessee Volunteers, I would highly encourage you guys to go check that out. Again, if you've not subscribed, wherever you're tuned in, we'd love to have you join the program as we wade deeper and deeper into Mark Pope's first season as a head coach. And I want to do a little bit of projecting here, talking about Kentucky's current tournament resume, and then taking a look ahead to see what could possibly happen using one of my favorite analytical tools online, BART Torvik. So, as you well know, we're not going to get into what means what and kind of how things work. I think a lot of you are very educated at this point in the season, and as Kentucky fans, you've always been educated about what analytics mean, what different things about the net ratings, and what bracketology exactly means. So, I'm just going to dive into this. Kentucky, as of right now, after winning that game against Tennessee, who is currently ranked 4th in the net, by the way, the Vols are, Kentucky went up from 16th to 12th in the net ratings, now boasting a 7-5 quad 1 resume. 7 quad 1 wins, already more than Kentucky had a season ago. If you want to look at some teams above them that they still have to face, obviously the Alabama Crimson Tide, who sit at 7th. You've also got Auburn at number 1. You've got Tennessee one more time. Again, they're number 4. You've already beaten a few teams above you. You've beaten Florida, who's number 5. Duke, who's number 3. You've beaten Gonzaga, who is somehow at 16-6 above you at number 11. I think their thrashing of Oregon State kind of boosted them a little bit last night. I was watching that game while doing a little bit of work post-Tennessee, Kentucky, and I was shocked at just how good the Zags looked offensively, but still, that's a team Kentucky has beaten. So the resume right now is very much so strong, and if you want to look at the games that Kentucky's going to have here to even further strengthen that resume, Arkansas, not a quad 1 win. Ole Miss on the road will be, as well as Tennessee at home, Texas on the road, Alabama on the road, Oklahoma on the road, Auburn at home, and Missouri on the road. You are projected to lose, I think, almost every single one of those games on the road, minus Texas, which right now you're favored to win 79-78. So it genuinely is just a coin toss. If you're looking at how many wins Auburn could pick, Kentucky could pick up here. I was just reading Auburn right here. You can get quad 1 wins over Tennessee, Texas, and then that's it. You would finish with 9 quad 1 wins. 9. I think you can get more than that. I think KenPom may be undervaluing the Cats a little bit here. So this is how I think Kentucky's season is going to play out. I'm going to go through wins and losses here through the regular season. I'm going to simulate that through Torvik, and Torvik's team cast will tell me what Kentucky's resume would look like and what seed they would be like if that was their win-loss record heading into the NCAA tournament. So we'll start here, obviously, with Arkansas. I think Kentucky will win that game. You go on the road to play Ole Miss, a team that shut down the Alabama Crimson Tide on the road in Tuscaloosa, a team that's very good defensively, top 10 according to KenPom. That's a game where I think Kentucky, frankly, will drop. You talk about how Kentucky gets up for big games. They lose games maybe they shouldn't. I think you're going to see maybe something similar here. Then you come back home, you get a win over South Carolina, and then you get a win over Tennessee at home. So back-to-back victories for the Cats. First time that's happened since, I think, the 11th, January 11th and 14th. Then you head on the road to Texas. Again, a game that you could absolutely lose because it's a game that is an opponent that, frankly, to reiterate something I've said a million times already, is not great relative to the competition you have played. Make sure everybody hears what I'm saying there at the end, relative to the competition you have played. Maybe you buck some trends. You get your 3rd straight victory in a row over the Texas Longhorns. Again, right now, KenPom thinks Kentucky is favored to do so. Then you play Vandy at home. Again, 4 straight victories for Kentucky. I think that Vandy is a good team, is an NCAA tournament team, but a game that Kentucky should have won, and I think in Rupp, they're going to have a good opportunity to win there. You go on the road to Alabama. Unfortunately, I think you lose that game. And then Oklahoma, who has really struggled in SEC play so far this season. They are really, really bad defensively. This is a shootout type of game that I think I could see Kentucky having, a game that Kentucky is currently projected to lose by 2. I'm going to say they lose that game. And then the big possible resume-altering win. I think this game could dramatically shift you on a seed line, either from the bottom of a seed line to the top of it, or just jumping seed lines overall. I think a game against Auburn will prove to be one of the most important of the entire season, and I think Kentucky wins it at home. Very rarely does Auburn win on the road in Rupp. If there was a team to ever do it, it looks like this Auburn team could very much so pull it off, but I think Kentucky wins that game. Then they go on the road and play LSU. This would be a perfect spot to drop a game. And frankly, I think Kentucky does. I think they turn around after beating Auburn and they lose to LSU because that's just kind of how Kentucky's season has gone so far. And then, I'm sorry, that's on the road. Okay, I flipped my Tigers here. So we're giving Kentucky a win over LSU, and you're losing on the road to Missouri. Excuse me, sorry. I thought that was a game on the road. The Missouri game is one that you would drop despite probably being better than the Tigers. So I'm going to hit submit here. We're going to simulate it, and we're going to see what Bart Torvik would say if that were Kentucky's record here at the end of SEC play. And then, of course, we'll get into the SEC tournament, and then we'll look at the 12 seed line as well as the 13 seed line. So if Kentucky finished 22-9, 11-7 in the SEC, they would have 10 quad 1 wins. They'd be 10-9, 2-0 in quad 2, 4-0 in quad 3, and 6-0 in quad 4. Kentucky would be a 2 seed. They would be the third best 2 seed over Iowa State, and they would be on that 2 seed line with 3 other SEC teams, Tennessee and Florida, Alabama and Auburn being number 1 seeds in this projection. Gentlemen, I want to reiterate it over and over and over. 9-9 in SEC play is not bad. It's not bad for Kentucky, especially in Mark Pope's first year. But if you get that, you have to have a little bit of help in the SEC tournament in Nashville. So we'll just add conference tournament sim here for Kentucky. And it says that they would beat LSU in this hypothetical scenario when they were 11-7, and they would lose to Florida on a neutral floor. So let's just say they get that win over LSU and they lose to Florida. We'll add that on, so Kentucky would be 23-10, 11-7. We'll simulate that out. According to Bart Torvik, Kentucky would they'd still be a 3 seed. They'd still be a 3 seed alongside Purdue, Michigan State, and Kansas. Wow. That is what you're looking for right there. Kentucky with plenty of opportunities, man. Plenty of opportunities to win a lot of good games and get a very strong seed. Let's break down here maybe what some different teams Kentucky could face would be. And I want to start here with the 12 seed line just to explain to you guys why you cannot afford to fall to a 5 seed. You can't go like 8-10 and win a couple of games in SEC in Nashville and then pop back up to a 5, right? So we'll start here according to Bracket Matrix, which is a website that I've talked to you about a lot. Again, we don't have to explain a ton. There are 85 different analytics sites, 86 different analytics sites out right now that have projections for the NCAA tournament. And this is what the average 12 seeds are. UC Irvine, Bradley, McNeese State, and Samford. Okay, we'll start with UC Irvine. I'm going to pull up their KenPom page here, and I'm going to go through every single one. UC Irvine happens to have a top 10 defense, according to KenPom. They already have a quad 1 win under their belt against UC San Diego. They won that game on the road. This is a team that excels at getting to the charity stripe. They are not the most efficient shooting team, but they are very solid rebounding the basketball, especially on the defensive end. Teams are shooting a very low percentage, and on top of that, they play with some very aggressive tempo. That's a bad matchup for you with the Anteaters, who have also had, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of different NCAA tournaments here where they've made some noise. I believe they did in 2019. The Anteaters did underneath Russell Turner, who is still their head coach. So that would be a very tough game. How about Samford? Samford right now is number 99 on KenPom and boasts one of the nation's better offenses. In fact, they're top 70 in that department. They're one of the nation's best three-point shooting teams as well. They are 12th in the country in point distribution from beyond the arc. They get 40.1% of their points from three, and they are led by a phenomenal senior guard in Trey Fort, who's shooting plus 40%. Rylan Jones, Jaden Brownell, a couple of different pieces from them that are also shooting around 40% or better. Another very, very good team with a high tempo. Bucky McMillan, we saw what they did against Kansas in the tournament last year. That's a very, very good Samford squad that I frankly don't think Kentucky would want to face in the round of 64. Okay, let's take a look here. The other different 12 seeds. You look at Bradley. Bradley is also not a team to be facing off against here. They're top 80. According to Ken Palm, they are the nation's second best three-point shooting team. They also boast a top 15 three-point defense and a top 80 two-point defense, something that Kentucky cannot say. They do not have a phenomenal resume, but they have beaten up on a lot of different competition recently while playing a little bit of a slower tempo. But again, they're really good at getting a lot of different points from beyond the arc. And Kentucky has a tendency to let the wrong players shoot. And whenever I say that, I mean the kids that are shooting low percentages on the opposing team, but you can't do that against players like Zeke Montgomery or Christian Davis, a couple different forwards for them that are knocking down shots from beyond the arc at 43.1% and 48.3%. They are a really, really bad matchup. A team that slid up, by the way, real quick, a team that slid up from the 5 to the 11 or 12 to the 11 seed line is VCU, a team that is top 40 on Ken Palm and has the nation's 17th best defense. But the final team I want to get to here is McNeese State. In case you don't know, McNeese State is led by Will Wade. If you don't know who that is, it's LSU's former head coach. I did a pretty bang-up good job with the Tigers. McNeese, 61st nationally, one of the best defenses in the country, leads the Southland in turnover rate. They cause havoc, as most Will Wade teams usually do, and they have won 11 straight games in a row. I believe they had Shahada Wells last year, and they lost in the opening round, but this team's going to be like 25-6, and they're going to come into this tournament with their hair on fire if they win their conference tournament. Again, you cannot slide down to that 5 seed line. You cannot let it happen. Bad things could possibly happen to you. I think Kentucky will finish as a 3 seed. The projected opponents, which we can get into at a later date, the projected opponents are kind of all over the place for that because of the fact that a lot of what you're going to see at the 14 and 13 and 15 seed line, if Kentucky gets up to its 2, is you're going to see a lot of automatic qualifiers from mid-major conferences. Teams that win their conference tournament. So it's kind of up in the air. We can dive into it at a later date. I just wanted you to see the 12s. I wanted you to see what Kentucky's projected win-loss record could be according to me. That's how I think the season will go. And I want to ask you guys in the comments below, where do you think Kentucky basketball will finish, and do they make a run in the NCAA tournament? That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDaw_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. You can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.